is 19 hours 30 in Guyana, and it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo alongside his co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, senior journalist of Kaiser News this evening. Their esteemed guest, former Attorney General, and the first one to arrive in the Zoom meeting, Mr. Anil Nandlall. It is promised by Leonard himself and Dr. Yog himself that they will take Mr. Nandlall out for a dinner for being early this evening. But in the meantime, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening to you, Kevin Smith. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen of Kaito Radio, and to my co-host, Leonard Gildarie. Leonard, I don't know what type of promises you are making to Kevin Smith, but one has to be careful when you got to take people who are going to be members of a government out for dinner.
I think they got a habit now, and it's a pattern that I'm tracking of twisting the truth and changing the narrative. Sounds familiar?
Yes, yes, yes. That's what this government of Guyana is presently all about, changing the narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, all across Guyana, the diaspora, wherever you're joining us from, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. And unleash the truth we must every single day and every single night until we're satisfied that truth triumphs. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 119 days, oh my God, since the general elections. It's almost 4 months. In 4 days, I think it will be 4 months since these general elections. We are making world record in every negative way you could think of. So, ladies and gentlemen, instead of us winning awards across the world and winning the accolades of the world for being the fastest growing nation in this world, tonight we are backpedaling as fast as possible, trying to reverse things, trying to rewrite history in many cases. Today we have a situation where, as we know, there is a matter, and I would be subject to the correction of Mr. Nandlall, but I feel it is a very important matter, but it is not a matter that is critical to the declaration itself, while it is critical to Guyana and our laws and everything else. But we have to ensure, and tonight Mr. Nandlall is going to disabuse of us of any mistaken notions we have as to the importance of this case and the importance of what Mr. Lowenfield has to do in the coming days ahead. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite our esteemed guest tonight, Mr. Anil Nandlall. As you know, he has been on the forefront of everything, and also being, very, very, I would want to use the word aggressive in its positive connotation, aggressively ensuring that he is chasing the truth and ensuring that the truth is told in every quarter. Mr. Nandlall, just before I open to you, sir, I would say to everyone that thankfully, as of tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the CIOG, the Guyana Islamic Trust, the Dharmic Sabha, the Center for Interreligious Dialogue, the Arya Samaj persons in this country, and the Burbi Central Arya Samaj, a lot of Christian organizations, Hindu organizations, Muslims organizations have all come out in one united voice, telling Mr. Granger, do the right thing, do the honorable thing. It is up to Mr. Granger to decide whether he can fulfill that mandate of doing something honorable. But all across Guyana, communities, associations, organizations are coming out in one loud, unanimous, united voice. Mr. Nandlall, before I seek your expertise in terms of the law, sir, and this matter of CCJ, how do you feel seeing that all of these organizations are coming out and calling upon the incumbent to concede and to do the right thing, sir?
Now, Yog, permit me to thank you once again for accommodating me on your program. It is always a pleasure to be here and to speak with you, and of course, your wide and very enlarged audience and viewership. It is not surprising, and it is indeed very optimistic that more and more organizations are coming to the fore and are expressing their views on this matter. This is not a political matter, as some people may think. This is not a private matter between the PNC or the APNU and the PVP. This is a matter of national importance, of public importance, that not only affects the future of every single Guyanese, but the future of our country. It has far wider implications as well for the region, the Caribbean region, for the Western Hemisphere, the Organization of American States, for South America, and for the global village, because we live in one free, small world now. The world has evolved and the world has changed. And the principles by which modern politics is governed or are governed is that they will not tolerate the type of behavior that we have seen exhibited by this government. Behavior where they refuse to comply with, simply speaking, the rules of free society, the laws of the land, the constitution, the civil rights charters that it has signed on to, the international treaties to which it has subscribed to, the norms of modern civilization. They are not subscribing to them, they're not complying with them. And the modern dispensation universally is that such conduct will not be tolerated. So that's the first thing.
Right.
Secondly, as more and more organizations speak out, it seems at the same time, of course, and logically and necessarily, and even deductively, if one may say that, the Reagan cabal support is progressively or correspondingly dwindling. And as that support is dwindling, the cabal is becoming smaller, and the cabal's operational terrain is becoming narrower. In the result, the cabal is becoming more and more desperate, and their pronouncements, their postures, and their actions are a little more extreme every time it manifests itself. Tonight, the president of Guyana, and he still is the president, caretaker president, recalcitrant president, sanctimonious gangster president, whatever adjective he has called upon himself, he still holds the highest office in this land. Tonight he will speak, and he chooses to speak to a platform unrecognized in the mainstream media of our country, refuses to use the state apparatus, the media of the state, refuses to use the media platforms of our hardworking, authentic journalists operating within Guyana, and goes upon a platform operating out of some basement somewhere in North America that is known for the expression of extremist views. That by itself tells you where the state, or to what state the government has descended. And that sends a message that is not unnoticed by us locally and by the international community. That is being noted. Then what will he go and say there tonight? I am not a betting person, Yog, and I'm sure you are not.
Right.
But if we were to bet, I will bet you that he will give one of those sanctimonious, self-righteous, monotonous, hollow speech, where he will commit, as he normally does, to the rule of law. He will bind himself to the canons of democracy. He will declare his obedience to the Constitution of Guyana. He will recommit his pledge to accept any declaration that GCOM makes. he will repledge himself bound by the decisions of our courts. And when he finishes that long, sterile presentation, 1 minute after that, he will unleash his band of mavericks to do exactly the opposite of what he just told the world. And that has been the story of David Granger. If we go back to when he was appointing unilaterally and unlawfully the chairman of GCOM, while he was breaching the Constitution, he was telling us that he's obeying the Constitution. After the confidence motion was passed, as he remained in government in violation of the CCJ ruling and in violation of the Constitution that mandated him to go to an election for 3 months and resign his cabinet, while he was in violation of the Constitution and the court order, he was telling us how deeply committed he is to constitutional rule, to the Constitution, to the rule of law, and to the decisions of our courts. Again, same thing he's doing again. So that is the story of David Granger. And tonight, we will be visited with another one of those monologues of sterility, a speech, nothing. And then when it's finished, tomorrow morning, you will hear one of his minions make some of the most extraordinary statements about the situation in Guyana. So, our democracy is on trial. And as you rightly pointed out in your opening remarks, our democracy, the way it goes now, the future of it, is tied to a decision currently pending at the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Right.
And when you're ready to go to that stage, we can discuss where we are in relation to that matter and what it entails.
Correct. But Counsel, before we get into the matter of the CCJ, I just want to pass a few things through your mind, please. It is felt, it is believed that APNO AFC, remember David Granger made a statement in Georgia since 2017, saying that he do not know, he cannot see how APNO AFC could retain government after the 2020 elections. And that had showed, when I had Mr. Donald Ramatar here last week, I related the same thing to him, to say that showed that APNO AFC really spent the last 5 years, one, living the good life for themselves, and two, planning how to rig these elections. And it was, when you connect the dots now, you can see that, okay, that's how he hired Patterson. Can we imagine if Patterson was the chairman of GCOM, this thing would have been long finished and over with. Then remember Mingo and Mingo's deputy and all of these planned rigging apparatuses that were set up all across the country. And in hindsight, now after hindsight is now a bad word, but you know, now we are seeing what was really being planned out, isn't it?
But Yog, permit me to correct, well, not to correct you, but to add an addendum to what you refer to as the Atlanta speech. In that very Atlanta speech, he pointed out to the PNC group that were in attendance that if you wish us to remain in government beyond 2020, then you have to go back to 1964 to understand how we got into government and how we remained in government until 1992. And there it is, he set out the blueprint, so to speak, the plan, the vision. How did they get into government? They romanticize the GAR into a relationship. And when they got the seats and got the government, within 2 years, they kicked the GAR out and most of his people. And then from 1968 elections, 1973 elections, 1980 elections, 1985 elections, they massively rigged it.
Yes.
And that is what Mr. David Granger was telling those people. Examine how we got in. They got in by the same coalition. And how did we remain in? We remained in by rigging elections. And Granger was very much part of the rigging process, though he denies it vehemently, because the army was used as a major instrument in the rigging machinery or apparatus. And at all times, Mr. Granger was in the leadership of that army. So his feigning ignorance does not impress me about those matters. And that is what he was talking about. So you are absolutely correct when you said that it was a plan. The thing is, Yog, the no confidence motion is what upset the apple cart, because they were planning it in a systematic way, and the no confidence motion is what presented a surprise. So they got Patterson. The plan was to do the house-to-house registration, disenfranchise in effect by not putting them on the list tens of thousands of qualified electors. You understand? But they did not contemplate our activism in the court. And they did not contest. So we were able to upset their plans in the court throughout. They didn't take into account the CCJ as well.
Correct.
And they also did not take into account the no confidence motion. And that shafted their entire timetable. But they still took it back. Because they still remained in government in defiance of the no confidence motion. But of course, their plans was largely thwarted by their own incompetence. Because nothing that they planned were they able to execute.
Correct.
Through their own incompetence. As I said, these are a people who are blessed or cursed with an unparalleled degree of incompetence. Anything that they do it wrong.
Correct. But Council, to that point, I just want to take your mind back to even recently. Ladies and gentlemen, APNO AFC's agents using state vehicles, by the way, have been around in the villages sharing out pamphlets, flyers, and so forth with totally incorrect numbers. Even those flyers, they cannot be added across. There is certainly a problem with math. But they did not take a mask or did not take foodstuff or hampers to share to people. Instead, they took numbers, false numbers. So it seems like, to Council's point, they can't get anything right. But Council, I wanna just take your mind to this point. The last time Granger spoke, I think I would say I was shocked that Granger came out and he spoke and he endorsed everything that Harman said. Remember, Harman had attacked Gonzalez et al. Granger endorsed. Now, over the past couple of days, Moses Nagamutu has been, is nasty a kind word in this way, in his remarks about everybody. The whole world has spoken against this current government, and Nagamutu has been probably the attack dog in this thing, has cursed out everybody. Is it fair to say that Granger now is put into a corner? Council, the reason I'm asking you this, given what Harman said yesterday or day before yesterday, that Granger will not concede and cannot concede, is Granger, do you think Granger is his own man, or he is now under orders by somebody?
Granger, I believe, is in charge. The leadership of the People's National Congress is structured in such a way where the leader remains the maximum leader. We saw historically what happened to a powerful man like Hamilton Green when he attempted to challenge Desmond Hoyt in Desmond Hoyt's capacity as the absolute leader. We saw what Hoyt did to Aubrey Norton, who was at one time a general secretary, when Aubrey Norton believed that he could have disrespected the leader. So I am in no doubt that Granger is in charge. And I believe that at some point in time, Granger plays the good cop and there is a bad cop arrangement. And then sometimes it's difficult to remain good all the time. So he descends. I don't know which one of the incarnation will manifest itself tonight. Nagamotu is a sad excuse. He has, I don't know, he will be recorded as one of the worst human beings ever to serve in public life in this country. He is a self-degenerate to levels I can't describe. I've listened to this man. First of all, he lacks basic intellect and basic knowledge about the matters which he's spouting about. He sloganeers. He uses a set of jargons. Behind them, he doesn't understand what they mean. He doesn't understand their implications. Do you know what damage he has done to our case at the ICJ because of the statements that he has made? But you know, they say ignorance is bliss, or where wise men dare not enter, fools wander about gladly. Nagamoto is in that category. He doesn't understand what he says. He doesn't understand, and he believes he sounds intelligent. So he goes out there, invokes a number of international law phrases and international relation phrases, labels that he must have read somewhere. He doesn't understand the meaning of them. But in order to project this image of intelligence, he sprouts them out, totally out of context, out of sync with reality, and exposes us to serious issues affecting our sovereignty in various manner, at different tribes, at different fora. But that is the man. That is the man. The least said about him, the better. But
so
tonight,
Council,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So two things quickly. One is Mr. Granger is obviously on this platform, and he will be spouting what seems to be, put it simply, you tell a lie so many times you get to believe it yourself. And that seems to be what ACTO-FC is doing. But Council, recently the opposition leader made a statement. I think he made a statement to the point of anybody who does business, like these people who are buying or dealing with the oil business especially, can come under certain investigations later. From your perspective as a former attorney general, sir, people who conduct business with this government that is in its current status, what is the legal implication that they need to be aware of?
We have explained at great lengths, Yog, that this is not a normal caretaker government. This is a caretaker government that also suffered the fate of a successful no confidence motion passed against them in the National Assembly. In violation of the Constitution, they remained in office for a further some 9 months, compounding their illegal status. Now 100 and some odd days after the election, by their own doing, by perpetuating their own illegalities, they are remaining in government. So this here, a caretaker government, is a far more powerful government than the status enjoyed by this motley crew. And we have made that very clear, and I am making it clear again. And you will note that knowing of the precarious position which they are in, knowing of the thin line, if there is one, of legitimacy that they have on their side, if there is one, knowing all of that, they have embarked on a number of exercises of selling and alienating billions of dollars of state assets. Now, when a government disposes or deals with state assets, it has a fiduciary relationship to the people, the owner of those assets. The people have not given you a mandate. Your mandate has expired. That is how the caretaker status comes in. We have to go back and examine these principles conceptually. You know why a caretaker government only has transitionary powers and only has powers to maintain the basic of a state, meaning pay the light bill and pay the water rates and ensure that the basic utilities are provided, pay public servants, is because the mandate of that government to govern has expired. Our democracy is based upon the principle of consent to govern by the majority.
Right.
And when your tenure comes to an end,
Mm-hmm.
that consent is withdrawn. So you don't have the people's authority anymore to dispose of their assets.
Right.
And these people are doing that knowing that they have lost an election, and they are enjoining or binding our people and the future government to contracts that the government that will be bound by the contract did not negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are bound by that contract and who are going to be affected by that contract did not give their legitimacy or their consent or their vote to that government that is binding them to a contract for the next 5 years. That is why the law says that those contracts must be set aside if they do not meet the expectation of the rule of law, of fairness, of transparency, and most importantly, if it doesn't achieve or receive the approbation of the government that actually received the will and support of the electorate.
But council, doesn't it place the next government in an even tighter spot? Because as politicians, you guys have said no witch hunting. Now, how do you have the balance between being accused of witch hunting versus doing what people expect you to do, go behind the wrong contracts and the wrong things and reverse them for the sake of the people? How do you balance that?
Witch hunting, my friend, as I understand the phrase, is an illegal, immoral act where you are going after someone, you are persecuting someone without just cause. That is what I understand witch hunting to be. Going behind a legitimate case of squandermania, of abuse of power, can never be witch hunting. That can never be recrimination. In fact, that is pursuing the rule of law. And that is what we intend to do. Enforce the rule of law in this country to restore the assets. And why are we doing it? Because we spite anybody? We don't even know who these people are. But at the end of the day, we will be failing in our commitment as a government if we do not review these transactions and rescind them if we consider them not to be in the public's interest. Because they were made in an environment that did not permit their making. So they are wrong ab initio. You understand?
Correct.
But that is the principle.
Right. The reason I ask you this, because, it is widely felt that a lot of persons, a lot of the beneficiaries of government handouts, I wouldn't say contract, government handouts at this stage, are persons who are politically positioned. And so if you go behind them, they will turn it around to say, you see, witch hunting. But, the separation of the gray lines are obviously there.
Witch hunting, my friend, is what they did to me for 2 law books. That is witch hunting. When a president said that he hired his attorney general, and as part of his package, he granted a permission or a facility for the state to continue to pay a subscription to books, which I was subscribing to.
Right.
Charging me for an offense out of that transaction is what witch hunting is. I will not do that to anybody.
Understood. Council, I want to bring us now to the CCJ matters that you are presently petitioning their attention for. And I will leave it up to you to walk us through it.
Well, I am glad in your opening remarks that you alluded to the reality that many people out there misunderstand the issues that are litigated or that are before the CCG, and in the result, they have a wrong expectation of what the ruling is likely to be. So it is important, Yog, that we manage that expectation, because we live here in a society where APNU, AFC, as you open the program by saying the entire world is against them. So whenever they get an opportunity to pull one sentence out that is slightly capable of an interpretation beneficial to their political agenda, oh my God, they spin it from now till thy kingdom come. And they have had very few of those. The opportunity has not presented itself to allow them much celebration in that regard. So you would find them taking a thread. Imagine the graphic picture of a man with a thread over his shoulder pulling at a loaded 40-foot container. You understand? Get that graphic image in your head.
Right.
And that is the task of this PR team that APNU has constructed. I don't envy them, and I will never want to exchange position with them. They have the most monumental task. Now, the Court of Appeal, as you know, was asked to decide a number of issues. And in a special jurisdiction that the Constitution has created for the Court of Appeal, to entertain only a narrow challenge. A matter was presented to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal felt persuaded that it fit that narrow parameter of its jurisdiction, and heard it, and made one order. I believe that the public is now fully aware that that special jurisdiction was created only to challenge the presidency after a president is elected. Of course, you can't challenge a president when he's not president.
Correct.
The Constitution speaks to a president, and a president means a president elected. You only get elected after the results are declared. So it means that you are a president. Once you are a president, you are the highest office holder created by the Constitution. So the higher, it's a principle in public law and in constitutional law. The higher the office, the greater the responsibility. And the higher the office also, the greater the protection accorded to the office. So logically speaking, the highest office in the land ought to have the highest form of protection. You know how difficult it is, and you did law, you know how difficult it is to remove simply a puny judge of the High Court. You have to go and set up a tribunal. First of all, the president has to instruct the prime minister, I think, to set up a tribunal. And that tribunal has to conduct a hearing. And that hearing, a report has to come.
Right.
And that report is then, you understand, the whole process. Because that judge has security of office, security of tenure. A judge is a powerful office in the Constitution, but it is not the most powerful office.
Right.
If a judge has that kind of protection, just imagine the protection that is accorded to an office, the office of the president.
Correct.
And so I say that for you to understand, and for your listeners to understand the narrowness of that jurisdiction. And because of the nature of the office that it is protecting, the narrowness must be strictly policed, and the requirements to qualify to fit into that narrow jurisdiction must be strictly construed and strictly complied with. Because, as I said, you are dealing with the highest office in the land.
Mhm.
When you look at the language of the section, it says that if you wish to challenge the election of a president based upon his qualification or an interpretation of the
Right.
Constitution, that those words must be given their narrowest interpretation. When you read the motion paper, as I'm sure everybody would have done by now, the Eslen David application,
Yes.
it did not challenge the presidency. In no way did it challenge the qualification of Irfan Ali,
Correct.
right? So that is the first thing. Then secondly, Irfan Ali is not elected. If Irfan Ali was elected, perhaps we would have been having a different conversation,
That's right.
because he would have been where Granger is now. So that is not there. So those are two simple points that the court can't, you understand?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
third point is a little more technical one. It is that the jurisdiction was never activated. You see, when you read the section,
Mhm.
it says that this title shall only come into effect after Parliament make laws to enable it and to make provision such as who can challenge, when the challenge can be made, and how the challenge can be made. Now, this is the office of president, bro. No Tom, Dick, and Dolary can walk off the street and challenge the office of the president. So you must have qualifications as to
Correct.
who will challenge. And you can't be allowed to challenge the president at any time based upon his qualification. So I am the president, I've been elected, I'm ruling for 3 years, or governing for 3 years. Somebody can walk off the street just like that 3 years after and come and challenge me. And how? Compare that with how you challenge a member of the National Assembly and his qualifications. From the Charan Das Prasad case, you know that you can't challenge it anytime. You only have 28
course.
days to
Of
challenge the election of a member of the National Assembly. And you can do so only in the High Court. And you can only do so by a particular procedure, an elections commission, an election
Mhm.
petition. And the election petition has a whole host of criteria that it must satisfy. It must be filed at a particular time. It must be served at a particular time and in a particular manner. It must be advertised in the official gazette. And you know what the laws of election petitions say? If you violate any one of the rules, it is fatal. Because the network of election laws are so designed that they do not permit procedural latitude. And once you violate a procedure, unlike the other areas of the law, where they tell you that procedure is subsumed by substance, here, procedure is as important as substance, because of the principle that election disputes must be settled and moved on, and so that the country can go on with a
Right.
government who's certain and legitimate. Well, all those principles apply with greater force to the office of the president, because it is the fountain of all executive power in this land. So, my brother, just take how you can just file anything and go in the
Yes.
Court of Appeal.
Mhm.
And then, to further protect the decision, the Constitution says that it is final, it's not appealable. Now, let us take that literally. There's another element of protection that shows you how strict the jurisdiction is protected,
Correct.
and no flimsy application can be caught dress made or contrived to go in there.
Mhm.
And that is exactly what they did with Eslin David. And the law says, and you will know that too, that when it speaks about a decision of a court not being appealable, it can only mean a legal decision of the court. It can mean anybody can go and just make a case not fit and proper to be heard there. You get an incompetent tribunal who makes a decision, and then you use the law itself to insulate the decision from challenge.
Mhm.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. So, Counsel, just clarification. So, a few persons would have inboxed us with questions, for example. I don't know if you can comment on this. I know you are one of the person in front of the court, but that the court seemed to have conveniently, as a matter of convenience, split the head of state from the National Assembly within one set of law to, as a matter of convenience, as I said, to allow them to add or to have jurisdiction in the matter. Is
Yeah,
that
I'm going to deal with all of that.
great?
So I wanted to do it in
Yes,
stages.
yes, yes,
Right?
yes.
So I say all of that so that you understand.
Mhm,
So the decision, in my view, is clearly appealable.
mhm.
Even if the CCJ has to look at it to see whether the Court of Appeal acted correctly. At least no one can dispute that the CCJ has that review power.
Correct.
If the CCJ can very well say, look, I've looked at it and I believe that the Court of Appeal acted properly, so therefore I can't touch it, the matter is unappealable. But at a minimum, they must be able to look over it to see whether the decision is reviewable.
Mhm.
You understand? And
Yes.
then they can decide, well, whether the court erred or not. But I don't want to go too deep into that.
Understood.
That's one thing. Let us deal now also, or let me deal with the question that you addressed, and then I will deal with also what Lowenfield did in relation to the court order. The other important aspect of the decision, what I just outlined there is just to give you some basis as to why that decision has to be reviewed, or else it will bore a big hole in our law and make the office of the president terribly insecure, where anyone can run and challenge a president. That was not the intention of the framers of the Constitution. The second point that we have to challenge this decision is because it has plunged our law in a state of chaos and confusion. And that is what your reader was carrying just now. The Court of Appeal, in order to justify, I don't know what they did there, and at some point in time I'll try to read it carefully when I'm preparing submissions now for this other court. But what they attempted to do is to draw a distinction. They broke our election into two. They say we have two separate elections, one to elect a president and one to elect the list. But that is not so. We are electing a president. We are voting for a list, and indirectly at the same time we are electing a president. And they establish a bifurcatory litigious route. They say you can only challenge a president in the Court of Appeal and you can only challenge National Assembly members of Parliament in the High Court. Well, let me show you the illogics of that. It means that you can get an election petition won and throw out a government because you throw out all the MPs, because you're able to show that the figures that they were declared as winning the elections by were fraudulent. And then lo and behold, you're left with the president. And then you have to go to the Court of Appeal now to get rid of the president. So we can win an elections petition against APNU. We throw the whole government out, APNU, all their members of Parliament out, but we are left with David Grange as the president. And now we have to go to the Court of Appeal. And if we lose the Court of Appeal, it's unappealable according to them. We are left with Granger as president in a PDP government. You see how constitutionally heretic that is and how wrong that is? When the truth is, if you go by way of an elections petition and you are able to succeed and you are able to get 33 seats, then you are to form the next government. And the list, your presidential candidate will become the next president. The High Court has all those powers in an elections petition. So these people have thrown the law in a complete state of chaos, and we cannot afford to leave our law or our laws in this confused state. The third component of the issue is the use that Lowenfield made of the court order. Now, the court, as I explained on multiple occasions, made what I consider to be an innocuous order. It made an order that is, to my mind, is tautologous, is superfluous, because all it said is that votes mean valid votes. Now, anyone who has a semblance of understanding of our electoral machinery and the laws governing our election process will tell you that the process itself on D-Day, on election day or E-Day, the process itself weeds out invalid votes. So what is counted by the returning officer at the end of the day are only valid votes. Invalid votes are discounted during the day and put in a different envelope and are never counted. So when the legislation talk about counting and recounting, invalid votes have already been kept out. And what are in the ballot box are only valid votes. Votes that are presumptively valid or prima facie valid, and the validity can only be overturned at an election petition. And that is the law in Guyana, and that is the law throughout the Commonwealth. So the Court of Appeal, in my view, decided nothing. But Lowenfield, the rogue that he is, used the Court of Appeal decision to give himself coverage, and he started to discount votes because he took it upon himself. Well, the Court of Appeal told me just now that votes mean valid votes. So he started to invalidate votes, a power that he doesn't have, a power that the commission doesn't have, because only valid votes are counted. The law already dealt with invalid votes on elections day. So everything that was recounted in the center there were only valid votes. Invalid votes were dealt with separately. So I say that to show you that Lowenfield acted clearly illegally, unauthorizedly, and fraudulently. And he acted in that way, taking guidance according to him in his letter, and you saw the letter that he used as a covering to the tabulation. He said in the letter that he's acting upon the guidance of the Court of Appeal. Now, he was very much there in the court by Zoom, as I was. And he heard that the court said that its decision was stayed for 3 days. How he hear valid votes? I didn't hear that the court stayed the decision. And he run and he gone to prepare. You would recall when he got served with the notice of motion, there was no injunction granted. He persuaded himself that an injunction was granted. And he restrained himself by that imaginary injunction from presenting the report. Right?
Yes.
And when he was actually injuncted, when the stay was granted, he was actually injuncted, he went and he acted upon the order. So on every front, this guy has demonstrated that he should be dealt with condignly. And hopefully that will be done in due course. But the other point that I want to make also is that he clearly also acted in direct violation of the commission and in law by Section 18 of the Act, the Election Laws Amendment Act. He is only to act in accordance with the directions of the commission. And the commission in writing gave him clear directions that he must act he must bring back and tabulate the results based upon the recounts. Nowhere in that letter told him to deduct and to adjust and to determine what is valid votes and to make his own, do his own jiggery pokery. He was supposed to bring back the total number of votes and calculate the seat allocations, etc.
And just to belabor the point for a second, Council, the notion of votes that Lowenfield deemed invalid is only based, or was only based upon APNU AFC saying so. It was not based upon it. Has your party gotten any indications that Lowenfield actually checked anything that APNU AFC said?
My friend, this man, if a judge, if a court of law ever did what Lowenfield did, it would be recorded as one of the worst decisions ever made by a court of law. Lowenfield just heard the allegations that these people made at the convention center. In fact, Lowenfield himself didn't hear it because Lowenfield was not in the workstation. Lowenfield read the observation report. When I think about what this man has done, the level of depravity to which he has descended, and I see people, organization endorsing what Lowenfield has done, we are really descending to the cesspit as a society and as a people. And what is dividing and driving us? I mean, we know it and we're going to discuss it at a later stage. But what you're seeing here, brother, is the degeneration of civility. This man has virtually stolen votes, 118 or 15,000 votes. And some organizations are saluting this man. And some organizations that they formed last night. Some black wooden group for Buxton. Anyhow, so he looked at the observation report, I don't know, in a study or wherever he was, possibly in a rum shop, and just decided to deduct votes. No inquiry was done, no investigation, no one afforded an opportunity to be heard, just disenfranchised 115,000 people. And the sad thing is, I don't know how Lowenfield is a major in the army. I mean, I spoke to him on several times. Lowenfield appears to be a very intelligent man. Lowenfield has a degree from the University of Guyana. How do you get your, having been a beneficiary of tertiary education? Lowenfield has big children. I know one is a professional. How do you convince yourself that what you have done there, that level of degeneracy, how do you convince yourself that you're right? What is driving you to do a thing like this, knowing that it will be showcased to the world and knowing that no right-thinking member of society, even if they want to support you, cannot support you without doing their own reputation harm? We got to think how these guys are able to perform these acts.
Correct.
So, back to the CCJ. What the CCJ can do, in my view, I have no doubt that they have jurisdiction. I see people still arguing about that. To me, that's a foregone conclusion. And they will set aside the Court of Appeal decision, obviously, on the ground that it is wrong. And it is plainly wrong. I don't think that's any great, we will have any great difficulty in doing that. How far the court will go, I am not sure. But whether it will set aside Lowenfield report is a matter for the court. But once the Court of Appeal decision goes, and whatever the CCJ rules, Lowenfield report is fraudulent. It has to go. And the chairperson of GCOM and GCOM has to instruct Lowenfield and possibly give him in his hand the figures that they want him to tabulate, and then let him bring it back. And if he fails, then you may have to dismiss him, hire a CEO, right there and get him to do the right thing. I don't see any other way.
So let's just discuss that for a minute, if you don't mind, because this is what is causing a lot of people concern. Leonard, so if the likelihood is that Lowenfield may refuse to change his numbers. Here is a man, counsel, who issued 3 reports already. In his press release that he did the other day, he said he followed or he obeyed or something the law. But same man who's saying he followed the law, he issued 3 reports or 4 reports, and our question is which one of the reports followed the law? So the population, our listeners and viewers, have this question. Mr. Lowenfield can do this again. He has shown he has no regard for law or anything else. He will do this again. Where does it leave this country? Because election declaration day is going further and further and further away.
In my view, the law says that the chief elections officer has to make the declaration, and we will have to get a chief elections officer to make the declaration. There's a deputy chief, or you hire somebody.
Well, but isn't your party concerned that the deputy chief elections officer will do the exact thing?
Well, look, we have had to face, some people believe that she might do worse.
Mm-hmm.
So the position is, or some people believe that GCOM can declare too.
Because, counsel, all of this places, unfortunately, the Madam Chairman in a terrible position. I mean, with every string that they are drawing tighter and tighter around the chairman, none of her or the secretariat, the seniors in the secretariat seem to be doing what is right. Mingo did what he had to do. Mingo's deputies did what they did. Lowenfield has now done so. And so Madam Chairman seems to be left on an island on her own.
Madam Chairman can walk with a person at the next meeting, and if she gives direction to Lowenfield, remember the chief elections officer is a creature of the commission. He's hired by the commission by a contract. Mm-hmm. He has given enough cause in law for summary dismissal and summary termination of his contract. There's no doubt about that, and Madam Chairman knows that. If one thing Clarence Singh knows a lot is also employment law and public law when it comes to termination of the contracts of public officers. She gave dozens of written judgments. And to hire a CEO immediately and gave him the instructions. So in Madam Chair's hand lies all the powers, in my view.
Right. So counsel, for a bit of specificity now, Lowenfield's first report, his preliminary report to the commission, had contained numbers. Is it then to be presumed that those numbers, since the commission's meeting accepted those, that their instruction is to now go and act upon those numbers?
My friend, having regard to the nature of the beast, were I in the chairperson's position, in my letter of direction to Lowenfield, I will list the numbers generated from the recount exercise. Mm-hmm. Lowenfield himself submitted it. Or I will attach them, staple them to the letter, and say these are the numbers, and these are only the numbers that you must use to prepare your report.
Because, counsel, what Lowenfield effectively did was to submit a 2-part report, one with the observation and one with the numbers of the recount. And then his second attempted report basically just used the observation. That's all he did.
And he was not supposed to put numbers in the observation report.
Right.
The observation, if you go back to the order, all he was instructed to do was to summarize the observation. That is all. Summarize the observation. What that means, we had allegations of dead people voting. We had allegations of migrant people voting. We had allegations that poll books were not in the box. We had allegations of relevant statutory documents not in the box. That is what he's supposed to do in a summary form. Summarize the observation,
Correct.
the allegations made. So that report, those numbers that he used were ultra vires the powers. He has no power to prepare that. So you left with what he was properly requested to do, and he did that. You take that, you attach it to the covering letter, and direct him to prepare the statutory form, or what you call a report, in accordance with these numbers or utilizing these numbers.
Well, Council, I could counter by saying that, and this is not being critical, it's assessing what has actually happened over, more than 100 days. The chairman has not been maybe forceful. Maybe that's her style. But what likelihood will she now start to be what she wasn't since she took the job? I mean, the only thing I think she did that I believe can say very forceful was her last press release when she says, the commission is not a court, and that was well done. But how does your party and how do you feel about it personally that she will take such a decisive action or stance?
Well, she is the chairman of the Elections Commission, and she was appointed to that position through the legal process. And it is our hope and our expectation that she will discharge the functions of her office with diligence and with professionalism. That's all we can hope for.
And I want to bring your attention.
What else can we hope for?
Yes. Council, I want to bring your attention to that press release that was issued on June the 26th. And this is coming from the Secretariat of GCOM, and this is with regards to the functions of the Chief Elections Officer. And I quote, "I have to execute my duties as a constitutional officer, particularly in the conduct of elections. There's been questions whether he's a constitutional officer. This is Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield. I want to hear your comments on that."
Gildarie, I have explained
Yes.
to Mr. Keith Lowenfield on more than 5 occasions that he is not a constitutional office holder, that he's a statutory office holder, and his office is created by the Representation of the People Act, and that he is hired by GCOM by virtue of a contract, and that he is answerable to GCOM, and he can only act upon the directions, and he's subject to the control of GCOM. I've explained that to him in person on a number of occasions, because we have had court matters where he purport to exercise some kind of independence, which he does not have. He does not have that. So I don't know who is advising him.
I want to bring you to the front page of Kaiser News today, Council. Harmon says Granger will not concede. And I want to bring you to what Lowenfield would have said there. Let's assume, and we look at the scenarios here, the court rules in a particular direction, which is it has jurisdiction and therefore it makes certain pronouncements. If Lowenfield refuses and he insists on making those same declarations, Granger does not concede. What options does the PPP has with regards to this elections 2020?
The legal options that are available are: 1, get Lowenfield to comply; 2, dismiss Lowenfield and get a chief elections officer to comply; thirdly, go to court and get a court order directing Lowenfield to comply; fourthly, many people believe that GCOM itself should assume that responsibility and make the declaration. Mr. Granger remaining in office beyond that, well, then clearly Guyana is gone. We would be removed from the League of Civilized Nations. We would become a dark rogue state. The Americans might invade. I don't know what will happen. Venezuela might invade. I don't know. But that would be the end of Guyana as a civilized country.
And today it was learned that the GCOM chair would not be participating. I don't think there's a word that it was used, but there was a
No, no,
statement that
I'm
came out.
glad that you asked that.
I want you to explain that one
Yes,
first.
I'm glad I forgot to speak about that. Today, the lawyer for the chairperson of GCOM wrote to the court indicating that the chairperson will not take an active part in the appeal. Now, that is not an abnormal position for an impartial person to assume in a partial litigation. You have competing political parties really driving the litigation, sorry. Enmeshed in the middle of this is the Independent Elections Commission that at the end of the day must remain independent of the political parties as far as possible. So it is not an abnormal thing to do for the constitutional office holder to say, look, step aside. I know what I have to do at the end of the day based upon how the court rules. So my presence is really not necessary. So I see people have put all sorts of spin to the position. The truth of the matter is that it does not have a material impact on the proceedings going forward or its outcome. The chairperson has already put her position out in the Court of Appeal. What was put before the Court of Appeal forms part of the record at the Caribbean Court of Justice and will be taken into account by the court if necessary. And of course, she remains a party. She cannot withdraw. She's a respondent taken there. The court would have joined her had she not joined herself. But all she has indicated to the court that I wish not to say anything. Because the submissions that are being made are competing politically and legally. And she has an impartial voice. So I don't view that. I think it's a good position that she has taken. It's a position that one can't fault her for taking.
And they're pleading. I mean, I would remember Miss Kim Kite's excellent presentation at the Court of Appeal. Those pleadings remain part of the materials, isn't it, Counsel?
That's correct. It's part of the record of appeal and will be referred to by all the lawyers if they wish to find out what GCOM position is. And certainly the judges, because I am sure that they would like to see what GCOM position is on the matter, because GCOM position will be influential in orders that they intend to make or that they would like to make.
Right. So, Counsel, I want to just, as Mr. Gildarie said, and Mr. Gildarie, one or two of our viewers are reminding us of your past with that record.
I think Anil, I think he's gonna buy us some drinks. Them boys will put aside the salary.
But Counsel, to get down to a couple of things. One is, you recall 2 weeks ago, or is it a week ago, when Granger came out and he said, "What is rigging? What does this word mean? I don't like this word rigging." And you know, he made these statements. But come down to this court case, Counsel. Let us just say, would Anil, Nandlall and the PPPC be in a negative position if the court CCJ says we don't have jurisdiction, full stop?
In a negative position?
Yeah,
no.
I know you explained it already, but just
the PPP, Guyana will suffer because our law was then
correct.
Our law, our body of laws, and I'm speaking here purely as a lawyer, I will feel deeply aggrieved by such a decision, because it means that the state of our law has gone into great chaos. And there is nothing I love more than the law. So that will depress me terribly. In terms of the PPP, I don't see that affecting us as a political party. The elections have come and gone, my brother.
Yes.
The results are well known. The votes have been counted and recounted. We have won the elections by 15,000 votes. And by hook or crook, the election votes have to be counted those election results have to be declared. And the will of the people have to be respected.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what happens. That will have to be the eventual outcome of the process.
Right.
How long it takes, I don't know. But we are not going to give up from that position. The people of Guyana have spoken and their voice must be heard.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I asked Council to repeat that because it is important. I'm still getting quite a few messages here. The CCJ matter is one the Council has addressed twice tonight, and they're interested for the sake of law and, you know, to use his term, the bifurcation that took place, that needs to be addressed and the records need to be put straight. But with regards to the elections itself, and Council will certainly comment again on this, the elections and the declaration and the CEO's advice to the GCOM chairman, those things still has to go through, and Lowenfield does not have an authority to come up with his personal interpretation of what qualifies a vote to go into the numbers that he's presenting the chairman. Council?
That's correct. Lowenfield, or a chief elections officer, has a statutory mathematical function to perform based upon the prescription or directions laid out in the relevant provisions of LOPA. There's a statutory form that he has to fill out. There is a statutory formula that he has to use to arrive at his total number of seats to be allocated for each political party based upon the number of votes.
Mm-hmm.
He has to then communicate with the political parties and they have to submit to him. Let us say the PPP has 33 seats. He has to inform us of that and we have to submit to him the 33 names who will take up those seats upon our list, which he has there at GCOM. You understand?
Right.
And those are statutory processes.
Correct. That's what I wanted to bring out. So those are, ladies and that's his duty. He has, well, the CEO has to fulfill those duties, has to commit himself to do it. Now, Council, we did mention this last week, Friday, when we had Mr. Ramatar on the program. And I want to bring it to your attention because there's been a lot of discussions around this. Mr. Commissioner Vincent Alexander, a little while back, would have said that he, and you had alluded to this to yourself, Commissioner Alexander would have said that he intervened and corrected Gokul Budu for some false formula or something like that. And yet now it is the same. Now Lowenfield is saying, well, the commission has no place and the commission cannot advise him. Yet those commissioners have remained, and even Mr. Vincent Alexander is silent now.
Vincent Alexander, I have from the beginning placed him as an integral member of the rigging team. So whatever Vincent Alexander says to me or says to the public must be viewed from that perspective. Vincent Alexander has been an executive member of the PNC since the rigging days of Burnham. He is the head of Burnham Foundation or something like that. That must tells you where Vincent Alexander stands in relation to democracy and democratic processes.
Well, he did say on our show that he's not a financial member of the PNC since many years ago.
Well, he can say whatever it is. Once you associate yourself with Burnham, the most fundamental part of Burnham's legacy is his rigged elections. And once you're an admirer of Burnham and so on, you are part of that process. Unless he comes out and he distances himself from that. But his role at GCOM, in my view, has implicated him as in the rigging conspiracy.
And there's a
Now,
comment. Okay.
Lowenfield and Alexander are obviously speaking and reflecting only to suit their political agenda. Now, the Constitution says that the Commission shall disclose or declare results based only upon the advice of the Chief Elections Officer, right? Now, you got to understand the setting. You have to understand that the Chief Elections Officer can only act upon the directions of GCOM. So when GCOM, you see the law is not an ass, and we can't turn the law upside down. GCOM is the one that gives him the directions. The law says that he can't disobey that. He has to carry that out. So once he carries that out, the paper that he coming back with is the right one. Once he comes back with the right one, GCOM is duty bound to declare the results based upon that right paper. And the Constitution says that they can only act upon the Chief Elections Officer certificate. But that also means that if he brings the wrong paper, they don't have to act upon it. If they decide to act, they shall act only upon the certificate. But they don't have to act upon it if it is wrong. Do you appreciate the distinction?
Yes.
So Alexander was correct. If it is the story that he's talking, if he felt that Gokul Bodu brought the wrong certificate, then he was totally right in not declaring upon that certificate and sending Gokul Bodu back to bring the right one. But to argue that Lowenfield can bring any paper containing any fraud and GCOM is obliged to declare that fraud is absolutely nonsensical.
A question.
And that's the distinction that you must draw.
Council, a question here from one of the viewers watching the program, interested to know the Council's good views of the appointment of the new Chief of Staff at this time.
I don't know much about the new appointment, and I don't wish to give myself any liberty to speak. I know, I'm just like you, I'm reading all the rumors and I'm reading all the speculations, but I don't wish to add to that narrative until I myself have some information that I consider credible.
Right. So, Council, I want to come back to the political scene, and has nothing to do, well, has a lot to do with the case, but more to do with politics. We have a unique situation now. And unfortunately, you are here and we cannot, and we would not want to separate Mr. Anil Nandlall from the PPPC. We have an unfortunate situation with COVID-19, sir. And as you know, the government seems to be more and more distancing itself. And I think that's a good decision, distancing itself from some of the administrative functions that is responsible. Now, we have a situation where COVID-19 lockdown and curfew and all of that has been relaxed, yet the numbers are increasing exponentially. What concerns does your party have at this stage while the gamesmanship continue?
Yog, I would honestly do an injustice to my party's position if I purport to speak on the party's position on this matter. I have been overwhelmed over the past 3 months or so with the party's legal matters. So
Understood.
please accept my excuse. And not that I don't know, but I prefer that a person speaking on behalf of the party on such a fundamental matter be one of the persons who are actually equipped with the information.
Correct.
Right?
And one of the viewers sent this comment to you in your reference to Burnham. They said Burnham would not have created such a disastrous attempts at rigging. It would have been perfectly rigged.
Let me tell you something. At some level, I myself admire Burnham. And I have said it over and over publicly that these people have disgraced Burnham. When Burnham rigged an election, or Burnham did any one of the things that he did it with a degree of sophistication and class. And he surrounded himself with persons of a particular intellectual caliber that could have defended him and defended his actions well. Mm-hmm. This crew that Granger has around him here is an absolute disgrace to Fobbs Burnham.
And speaking about...
And Burnham was a political demagogue, let me say that.
Yes, and speaking of coming right back to the president, here is the other situation that I know that maybe it's not fair to put this on you, but you know, if at some stage we can get the party's reaction. Mr. Granger had said he always abides with the Constitution, he abides by the court, blah, 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 blah. But we know that he defied the same Caribbean Court of Justice ruling on the decision 30th of September. We know he did not abide by that. We know that he did not abide by the Chief Justice's advice on the appointment of the chairman of GCOM. So if, let us say, come weekend, all these court matters are outside and gone and so forth, and the chairman makes a declaration does not suit Mr. Granger, what comfort would this country have that Mr. Granger will abide?
Based upon his record alone, if we are to go on that, the grim reality is that he will not abide. Mm-hmm. And then all the sanctions that we are hearing about, I suppose, will come crashing upon them. I averted to possibly military presence, possibly from the United States or from Venezuela. I'm not sure. I'm only speculating. I don't know how the people of Guyana will react, but it will be fair game. And the PNC and David Granger will be responsible because they are telling you that they are not going to abide by the rules of democracy, by the rules of civilization. So we will descend into a state of anarchy.
And from an analytical perspective, Counsel, one has, I mean, Gildarie and myself, we face it every day. There is so much things that's going on that one has to be concerned that given Granger's history, recent history, this is within the last 5 years, and his party's recent history within the last 5 years, one could see that there are certain moves being made because the PNC knows now that it cannot win another election in the near future. So this seems, a lot of people are saying this is their last gasp and last grasp at power. Therefore, the likelihood, Counsel, of them giving up or accepting that they have been defeated is a nightmare for many people.
I don't think that this is the PNC's last grasp for power. I think that this is this cabal last grasp for power. Because of their own behavior, they have become permanently unelectable. Mm-hmm. I believe that in the PNC, it cultivate a new brand of leadership and, demonstrate that it is finished with its historical ways and it sufficiently distances itself from this rigging cabal. I believe that the PNC will remain a powerful force. Look, with all that they have done, disobeying the Constitution repeatedly, remaining in government for how long after the no confidence motion, mismanagement, corruption, nepotism, failure to deliver their promises, discrimination, killing of the productive sectors right across the country, 200 odd measures of taxation, and I can go on.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, with all of that, they got 31 seats. That
That's
is
true.
remarkable.
Mhm.
That is remarkable.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
they could have, imagine if they had performed credibly. Imagine if they had actually delivered promises to their supporters. Imagine if they actually gone into the villages as the PPP did and actually work. Imagine if they had called that election just after the no confidence motion was passed and they were able to put out a sympathetic case that they didn't get an opportunity to deliver the promises and use that as the excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they stood a strong chance of winning those elections.
Right.
So it's not the PNC I fault. I fault this cabal of, look at Harman. Harman is 67 years old. I mean, I have the greatest of respect for elder citizens. But Harman has no future, and he's destroying the future of the young leaders of the party when he makes the type of statements that he made. Harman is an old man. He has nowhere to go. He's on his way to the abattoir. I mean, I mean that metaphorically. So, you know, he has nothing. He's purely driven by his self-interest.
Gotcha.
And the allegations of corruption and so on that surrounds him or surround him. And so I believe that they have a constituency, a huge constituency in this country, an important constituency in this country that need leadership. Right. And they have manipulated and misled that constituency in a terrible way. In fact, they have exploited and they continue to exploit that constituency by misinformation in furtherance of their own interest.
Correct.
Look, Brian Tiwari and the couple of them who are benefiting from the largesse, go and speak to the ordinary PNC supporter on the east coast of the Demerara. Don't go too far. Just go to Plaisance, go to BV, and go to the other villages and hear the plight of those people and what they have endured at the hands of this government. And today, they want those people to come out on the road. They want those people. Did they look at the 200 or how many hundred of acres of land that they gave away at the back of Ogle? Did anybody from Plaisance get any? Did anyone from Vrijsla South get any? Did anyone from BV over the line get any? No. Go and look at the people who got. Their friends, their cronies. But they want the ordinary PNC supporter to come out on the street, to be used and abused by them. But fortunately, and that is why I have such belief and confidence in my Guyanese people. I believe that they have recognized the follies of their way in the past. They are now educated and they know that they have been misled. And they saw the PPP out of office and they saw the PPP in office. They lived both lives and they see the difference. And I believe that that is what is keeping this country, in the state that it is. But it is coming to an end,
Yes.
I am a supreme optimist, and I believe that at the end of the day, their bark is louder than their bite, and they will eventually move out of office. Look, 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, we heard Ramjatan speech bidding farewell to his staff. And then somebody give him a shot. Somebody give him a shot of double Grey Goose. I'm putting my short Duncan and Mr. the pool guy. What's his name? The guy
No
from the
comment.
Islamic Center.
No comment, Council. Cameras is my brother, and he will continue to be my brother, as you are as well. We're brothers.
You don't know how close Kamraj and I are. And I tell him these
Exactly.
things.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been an interesting discussion with Council, with Mr. Anil Nandlall, and we certainly look forward to the next couple of days of their appearance, well, the full day of appearance at the CCJ. And Council, we'll certainly look forward to your summation at some stage of what would have transpired and maybe the next steps after that. 60 seconds, Council. Any comments, closing comments?
No, I continue to worry
Mhm.
for our country and the state that it is in. It is still available, an available option for Mr. Granger to take the high road. I believe that he's a man, from all that I know of him, I know that he's a man who respects his legacy. I know that he would like to be seen in a proper light by future generations.
Right.
And it is all in his own hands.
Thank you.
Mr. Granger can't tell me that he's not convinced that they have lost the elections.
Thank you.
And leaders have a duty to celebrate when they win and to accept when they lose. Leadership is not a bed of roses.
Correct.
And Mr. Granger has to rise to the occasion. And the country and the world will recognize him for that. But it's a matter for him. It's either that or he takes the other road. And the other road is hard and arduous. I don't know whether he can survive it.
Thank you so much, Council. It's been a pleasure to have you here tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time we wrap up our 592, room 592 tonight. We certainly look forward to you joining Mr. Gildarie and yours truly tomorrow at 1:30 as we continue Elections Watch. But it's been great to have you, Council, and we look forward to more interaction with you.
Thank you very much. And I am always there. Once you invite me, I will try to accept and participate.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight. Do have a wonderful night wherever you are. Be safe, stay home, and stay out from trouble. And do not take on the negaholics and the people who try to put strife in our lives. Be safe and stay praying for our country. Goodbye. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
We're off, Yog?
Yes.
COVID-19 tips sponsored by Dex Soap. 1. Practice social distancing. 2. Wear your mask when leaving the house. 3. Wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds using our Dex Soap. 4. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flex elbow when you cough or sneeze. Choose Dex Soap for that extra cleanliness. Dex Soap is affordable and available nationwide.